On this edition of Motorcycle Experience, we'll do our best to avoid the dead man's hand at the Pioneer Saloon in Good Springs, Nevada. Then, during this week's Red Adventure, expert off-road rider Tony Sharpless delivers all the dirt on adventure luggage. Then our resident riding instructor Clinton Smelt says, practice makes perfect. Plus, motorcycle journalist Colin Fraser will roll up with some advice on shopping for a used bike while we look back at the cult classic 2007 Yamaha MT-01. All this and more on Motorcycle Experience. Hello and welcome to Motorcycle Experience, the voice of motorcyclists everywhere. I'm Dave Hatch, and this week we'll kick off our show by sampling a brand new easy riding sport bike, the CBR 300R. Back when I was in my early 20s and had been seriously bitten by the Full Leathers race replica bug, there was a wonderful batch of small displacement motorcycles that you could buy that were perfect for new riders who wanted to look cool and go fast. Recently, a whole wave of small displacement sport bikes arrived at your local dealership, and they appear to have picked up on that trend that first appeared back in the late 70s, early 80s. Bikes such as Yamaha's R3, Kawasaki's Ninja 300, and KTM's RC390. Added to that list is the machine you see before you now, Honda's CBR 300R. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, that's a CBR 500, right? But you would be mistaken. At the heart of this beauty is a liquid-cooled, fuel-injected, dual overhead cam, 286cc single-cylinder engine, mated to a slick-shifting 6-speed transmission. Up front, you'll find a 37mm non-adjustable fork, a 296mm single disc brake, and a 17-inch radial hoop. While out back, a single adjustable Pro-Link shock soaks up the bumps while riding on another 17-incher. ABS is available as an option, but how does the CBR 300R work out on the open road? Well, this week we invited Kathy McCracken to sample the Honda alongside a Yamaha R3 and Kawasaki Ninja 300. And here's what she had to report back after a full-on day in the saddle. So we rolled this out of the garage this morning. It was nice and clean, ready for you to ride. What was your first impression when you saw the motorcycle?
I really like it. It looks nice. It's not a tiny bike, but it's small enough for someone who's short like me to ride. Really liked the way it looked.
So you fired it up and off we went. What was your impression about the bike's engine itself in terms of shifting, the sound of the motor, the power of the motor? What did you think?
Really, really smooth shifting. I never had trouble with shifting it at all. I wouldn't like to ride it extensively on a highway where you need a lot of extra power potentially to pass or get out of a bad situation. Anywhere else, lots of power. Didn't sound like a little sewing machine, which I was actually afraid it might at first, being a single cylinder, right?
Right.
It had a nice sound. It's not an overpowering exhaust, but it's not non-existent either.
Right.
Really nice sound.
So the bike has a single disc up front, fairly large, and it obviously comes now with ABS brakes, which is really great for safety.
Yeah.
How did you like the braking?
It was a little different from my bike at first, I'll be honest. So I felt it a little spongy the first couple times. Maybe I wasn't quite ready for it. Once we got going, I never had issues. It stopped where I wanted. I wasn't overshooting any marks. It wasn't too aggressive either, so I wasn't startling myself when I stopped.
How about the suspension? We were on everything today from a really nice, super smooth road to some really potholed back roads. How did you find the suspension?
It didn't skitter. So when I was going over bumps, it wasn't skittering around on me. I did notice, obviously, the bumps. It wasn't perhaps as soft as something I'm used to, but I don't ride a sports style bike myself, so it's not quite what I'm used to.
Yeah.
But it never felt like it was moving around on me. It was very solid.
So what did you think of the overall fit and finish of the motorcycle?
For an entry-level bike, and it's not hugely expensive, it looks really nice. There's no obvious flaws. You don't see joins in bodywork. It's very smooth. It's well finished and put together. I really am pretty impressed for if this were an entry-level bike, really nicely put together.
What's the one thing that really impressed you?
Really light and nimble. They all handled fabulously. Like we cornered, these are roads I've never ridden, and we were riding pretty quickly through a lot of those corners and never felt that it was going to wash out. They all handled great.
So who would you recommend this bike to? Who is this bike targeted for?
I would, a small, as in short, new to brand new to novice female rider. Really, I think if you were tall, you'd be cramped on it, and I think you'd be disappointed. It's going to run them for probably a couple of good seasons.
Yeah.
And then when they outgrow it, you've got enough riding done in a couple of years to know what you're going to look for in your second bike.
Right.
Because you really have to get, a couple of years in before you can decide what am I really going to use it for and what do I want.
So great for those first 1 or 2, 3 years of basic riding skills.
Basic riding, yeah.
Getting your confidence up and feeling safe.
Yep, getting out of trouble, no problem, and learning all the things you need once you're out of basic training.
Very nice. Well, thank you very much for helping us out today.
Thanks, it was great.
Great job. Hang in there, we've got plenty more experience still ahead. Next, expert off-road rider Tony Sharpless gets packing, while Norm Wells and I discover a desert ghost town saloon with a Hollywood connection. Portions of Motorcycle Experience are brought to you by Honda Canada, BMW Motorrad, and Olympia Motorsports. Closed captioning of Motorcycle Experience is brought to you by the TELUS Ride for Dad. Welcome back to Motorcycle Experience. I'm Dave Hatch, and it's time now for this week's Red Adventure. Today, expert off-road rider Tony Sharpless wants to look at packing your luggage and getting set to go the distance. But before we do that, let's check out this week's Ultimate Ride. Okay, so as you know, each year Norm Wells of BMW Motorrad and myself have been packing up our motorcycles and setting off to explore a variety of destinations all across North America. This year, winter's early arrival prompted us to head south to Nevada, where we laid down our credit cards and rented a couple of motorcycles from the Eagle Rider folks in Las Vegas. Over the next 2.5 days, we explored the wonderfully scenic and sometimes very twisty roads that are within an easy ride of the entertainment hotspot. And on our final day of riding, we discovered the mind-blowing El Dorado Canyon, a gold mining town dating back to 1861. Then we followed that discovery by paying a visit to a 1913 saloon with a dark history and a serious Hollywood connection. Well, Norm, here we are midway through day 4 in our Viva Las Vegas Ultimate Ride, and we're in Good Springs, Nevada, and we've got the Good Springs General Store and the Pioneer Saloon behind us, and it's been just a great day.
We just keep coming across these little gems on sheer luck. We planned this trip yesterday and had no idea what we were going to end up with, and all day long, it's just been one thing after another.
Yeah, we've been riding all day, and we thought we would break for lunch in Jean. And I saw a sign for the Ghost Town Cafe 6 miles up the road. I thought, well, let's try that. It's got to be better than a casino in Jean. And yeah, it paid off. Eh?
Absolutely. I mean, the whole day has been, we started off with the 165 down into El Dorado Canyon, and then came out of there and took the 164 through Nipton, which was another
the Whistle Stop Cafe.
Yeah, your regional office apparently.
Yeah.
And then up to 15 to Jean and to here. And in each place, we found these unique historical pieces, and this one specifically, I mean, it's still all original, 1913, and you saw a show in there and you said, wow, the production on that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, the ghost hunters or whoever they are, they had been here and done a 4-day shoot. I was impressed, but I've been just impressed with the whole day. I mean, we've had some canyon riding, some straight desert riding, and Nipton was a really nice place to stop and sort of get our bearings, because we had dipped over into California just briefly, and we had the San Bernardino Mountains to look at, and then the Pioneer Saloon and all the history that's here. So it's been an ultimate day.
If you look at it on the map, you think, wow, that's not a very big loop. But if you take into account that you're going to be stopping at these places and spending some time there, it's actually a good solid day ride.
Yeah, the latter half of the afternoon, we're going to head back to Las Vegas now.
Yeah, just you have two choices, because this road here can go on, and so if you are on adventure bikes with the right tires, if there is a bit of dirt, which would take you back to 160, which is the road we came in yesterday where Vegas unveiled itself in front of us.
Right.
Or we're going to go back now to the 15 and just shoot up the 15 and get back to Eagle Rider and turn the bikes back in.
Return the motorcycles. Well, it's been an amazing 4 days. I think today, well, we'll talk about it when we get back to Eagle Rider, the entire trip, but today has been so much fun because we've added a little bit of history as well to our fantastic scenery and fantastic roads. So, super.
Excellent.
See you to Las Vegas.
Let's go.
All right. Be sure to tune in next week as we'll be recapping our entire ultimate ride down in Las Vegas, Nevada. As for now, let's catch up with Tony Sharpless. So Tony, this week on the Red Adventure, just before we started doing the segment, you said, I want to talk about luggage again. And I said, but we already did luggage. You said, no, backpacks. So you separate the two in terms of luggage choices.
Yeah, exactly, Dave. When you're going out on the road and you're going some destination, perhaps taking a week's holiday, then, you know, panniers and luggage that straps onto the back are, you know, more of a practical way to do that. But when you're doing off-road, then maybe you want something a little bit more casual. And that's why I brought a couple of different backpack ideas.
Okay.
So what I would pack in my backpack is something that, in case the weather turns foul, or I've got some dry gloves in here. I've got a sandwich bar, you know, just some little things. And everybody has their own personal kit that they would never go riding without. Maybe it's reading glasses, your GPS, maybe it's, you know, Kleenex, whatever it is. You need something to carry it in. And instead of dragging yourself down with jamming all your pockets with everything.
Right.
I just throw it into a backpack and then I've got everything, and I can stop out in the woods and we can have a picnic. And there's a couple of different ones that you want to look at, but I always make sure that there's a chest strap on them, because this chest strap, when you're riding off-road, will keep the backpack from jumping around and coming off or sliding off one of your shoulders.
Right.
So that's something to look for, and both of these backpacks have it. They're two different ways. I've got a hard shell here. So this is a nice one that the dust doesn't really settle on because it's a hard shell. And it also has the nice wide straps so that it doesn't cut into you while you're riding, and it has the chest buckle as well.
Right. So you're really looking at this from a perspective of, I'm going out for the day, or maybe I'm going out for an overnight.
Yes.
And that's it. And you don't want to be weighed down with luggage on the back of the bike, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it kind of hampers riding off-road. It kind of hampers the bike a little bit. It's totally doable. But if you're just doing a day trip, this is a great way to go, and a lot easier and quicker to pack and easier to take off and dig into it as well.
Right.
So it's just a little more casual way of doing the same thing that we talked about before.
And you don't get concerned about too much weight. I guess you pack accordingly, right? Because I think, oh man, if I'm going to be riding for the next 6 hours, the last thing I want is to be weighed down. Right?
Yeah, what you want to do is, first of all, you know, pack light. You want to make sure that you adjust the straps so that it's sitting in the right spot on your back. Not too low, unless sometimes if you sit down a lot and you're just going to be riding some gravel roads and sitting down mostly, you could mount it kind of low, because then it's going to be sitting on the seat mostly.
Right.
And it takes the pressure off of your shoulders.
Wonderful. Well, I'm really glad that you suggested that we do luggage again. Thanks, Tony.
You're welcome, Dave.
Awesome. Still ahead, veteran motorcycle journalist Colin Fraser has some sound advice on shopping for a motorcycle. And on shifting gears, expert riding instructor Clinton Smout says practice makes perfect. Welcome back to Motorcycle Experience. I'm Dave Hatch, and it's time now for Shifting Gears. This week, professional riding instructor Clinton Smout wants to talk about those dangerous intersections and prepping for the worst. Well, Clinton, we're going to drive viewers crazy because we've been discussing the last two times on Shifting Gears the importance of being alert when you approach an intersection, because we've seen a study now that proves 50% of the time or more you're going to have a problem that's going to happen at an intersection.
Not on the highway.
Yeah. So here we go. Segment 3, intersections. You had talked about being on high alert, covering the front brake, even giving a little bit of brake pressure, warming up the brakes. Sounds to me we need to be practicing our braking, right?
Absolutely. What some of the officers told me on the investigative side, the forensics, is there's no skid mark, Dave.
Right.
So the car turned left, it's right in front of the rider's path.
Yeah.
That tells me they did this. Kunk.
Right.
So they didn't have practiced muscle memory braking habits.
Right.
So they did the test, how many years ago? They were able to stop when the instructor did this, or the tester.
Yeah.
And they didn't really practice hard emergency maneuvers.
Right.
So go back to a course and take kind of a freshen up, hard braking lessons. If there isn't a course near you, go with a friend to a parking lot and do some first gear, progressively harder and harder stops.
Right.
So that confidence and experience is built in. If and when we get cut off, your brain is going to react into habit, which is stopping.
Right. So it's all about muscle memory. That's what we're talking about, and also being able to predict what your motorcycle is going to do, because everyone's bike is different.
Absolutely.
So get out to a parking lot. Maybe you don't need anything fancy, just a couple of pylons or...
If that, there's usually
gym
painted
bags.
lines.
Oh yeah, okay.
Be careful with if it's wet, because any paint is a lot more slippy.
Yeah.
But you always go with a buddy. A lot of places might be for lease. Don't go sneak in there by yourself. There could be weeds coming up through you when they find you if something happens.
Right.
So it's like swimming. Always go with a buddy.
Buddy system. That's new. That's good.
Just in case.
Okay. And then just obviously start slowly and just increase your speed and increase your braking distance, but just start working on getting a good feel. Front brake only, rear brake, we're doing both?
Both. Racetrack, we talk about front brake only.
Right.
Dirt biking in the beginning, rear brake only. But if you're a street rider, you're going to get maximum braking efficiency out of good use of both. If it's non-ABS, we recommend 2, 4, however many fingers you want. We don't care, as long as you're using it. And that's a progressive application. You don't want to have cat-like reflexes.
Yeah, no grabbing. Yeah.
Because what happens, Dave, is you can skid the front tire before the weight transfer compresses the suspension and your tire print gets bigger.
Right.
So go out, slow pull. Once you feel it move, then you can reef on it harder.
Right. And is there any point to practicing just with the rear brake only?
Well, we do a lot of it. We call it skid school in the gravel.
Right.
Lock it up, turn the wheel so it drifts. And that prepares the street rider for the eventuality that the back end's going to slide out.
Drift, yeah.
And the dirt rider who has done that giggles when it happens rather than go, and fall down.
Okay, so what I'm hearing again, which we always try to drive home the message, this is a sport, and if you play a sport, you got to practice. Spring, summer, fall.
Absolutely. Don't wait until the car cuts you off.
You got it.
Okay then, now that we've got you all set for the open road, stay tuned, because next, Inside Motorcycles senior editor Colin Fraser has some great advice on shopping for a used set of wheels. Portions of Motorcycle Experience are brought to you by Honda Canada, BMW Motorrad, and Olympia Motorsports. Welcome back to Motorcycle Experience. I'm Dave Hatch, and we'll wrap up our show now by stepping back into the time machine. Traveling back to the year 2006, the summer when we first sampled Yamaha's futuristic cruiser, powered by an old-school pushrod V-twin, the MT-01. But before we do that, let's pay a visit to the used section at our local motorcycle dealership. Here now is Colin Fraser.
So Colin, this week in the Used Bike Corner, we're talking about shopping for used bikes, and this is kind of fun. I almost feel like we are shopping for a used bike because we're going down the list of what to look for. And one of the great ideas you had just recently was, oh yeah, by the way, don't forget, if you go to look at a bike at a private sale, make sure it hasn't been warmed up.
you want a cold engine. Please explain.
Well, I remember way back when we went to look at a bike, you ended up buying a twin, and I was happy that the bike had been sitting. So when a bike first starts, it's going to reveal a lot of things in terms of its noise. Also, warm engines hide a lot of things, particularly glitches and whatnot. So an engine that's cold, you shouldn't rev the heck out of it or anything, but it'll tell you a little bit about its behavior, if it's running rough and coughing, or if it's hard to start.
Yeah.
Because particularly a bike that's been warmed up starts easily. So if you show up and the bike's been running for a long, long time, it may be symptomatic that this bike isn't going to start the next time, particularly with twins.
Right. This week, in terms of our road test, we're looking at the 2007 Yamaha MT-01. Do you remember that motorcycle?
That's a twin that could be hard to start. 1670cc, push rod, old school but modern technology motor, modern technology chassis, lots of R1 parts, a really interesting, cool, weird motorcycle.
Yeah.
Hardly sold any of them, and I think eventually will turn into a collector's item. I have a friend who has a couple of them and runs them at the Bonneville Salt Flats in land speed record stuff.
Yeah.
And not hugely powerful, but huge torque, just crazy performance from this thing.
Yeah. Now you can pick one up used, certified, in good shape for anywhere between $7,000 and $8,000, which I think is a bargain. Like you said, they're going to become a cult classic. This is what we thought of that bike back in 2007.
It is fun. It is a hoot to ride. When you first look at it from a distance, it makes me think of something like Mad Max and the Thunderdome and that. You'd also think, oh my man, it must be incredibly top heavy in that. It must be hard to handle, this big massive tank and that, these V-twin engines down below. It is not. It is very nimble. The whole idea of them putting it on the sport chassis, I believe it's the R1 swing arm that they've got. It is so nimble to handle, back and forth, just flip it in. It is so smooth. It is, yes, it's very deceiving indeed.
It's extremely tall here, but I guess with that seat being as narrow as it is, no problem, right?
I couldn't believe it. It says it's 32.5 inches high. I don't believe that. I didn't measure it, but I was almost flat foot, you know, just 3/4 of my foot flat on it. Don't know if I would want to be a passenger on this. This is a great one-up bike. A passenger could certainly go on it, but my inclination would be passengers do not apply.
Or just apply for a very short trip.
Very short trip, or be a very small petite woman. Other than that, I think most motorcycles should be meant to be ridden alone anyways, and everyone should have their own, you know. So
there you go. So who do you recommend this bike to?
I am not a big person by any means, and I can easily handle it. But 5'5" and up in that, average build as I am, I think anybody could ride this and that. And if you had 1 or 2 years experience underneath it, you could certainly handle the power and enjoy the power that goes with that much torque, low down grunt. But that's what makes it fun.
Well, that's it for this week's program, folks. We're all out of time, but next week we'll be sampling Harley-Davidson's brand new Softail Slim, and we'll follow a report from the Tellus Ride for Dad in Whitehorse. So till then, keep your feet on the pegs and your right hand cranked. Bye for now.